But with the Latino community there mired in poverty, it is a situation where Lazarus House is involved in a constant struggle to keep its head above water. And of course, foreclosures and the economy have further devastated this community. Now, for the past 2 years, the price of home heating oil, which is affecting most of us, has added to the misery of all low-income people, including Latinos. Now, the biggest victims are children. And it's not just because they're cold in their own homes, because home heating oil has become unaffordable. There is something more sinister happening. I reported last fall on a study by the Boston Medical Center that revealed high energy costs profoundly affect children's health and well-being and their safety. It's not something that I ever stopped to think about, but of course it just makes perfect sense. Families who can't afford to properly heat their homes make budget trade-offs that affect the health and well-being and safety of their children, as well as the development of their children. In order to pay their energy bills, these families don't feed their children as well, or they deprive them of proper medical care. Additionally, their homes become dangerous places because families resort to dangerous methods, such as open ovens and space heaters, to get some relief from the cold. I've covered countless stories on the home heating oil crisis, and I always come away from it shaking my head at the stunning reality that here in the United States of America, people in the Latino community and beyond, low-income folks, went without heat this winter. It's my job to remain absolutely neutral when I cover a story, and it's one of the things that I worry about the most, along with making sure that the story is accurate. I'm always asking myself, am I being fair to all sides of the story? Well, few stories have tested my impartiality like the immigration raid in New Bedford that marked a one-year anniversary on March 6th. Now, no doubt the opinion that I voice here, that I've been so careful to keep out of my reports, is influenced by my border town upbringing. I had a front row seat to what was then the Immigration and Naturalization Service, and what is now so appropriately acronymed ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement. I believe I can say without exaggeration that on March 6, 2007, ICE unleashed unspeakable horror in New Bedford for more than 350 workers of the Michael Bianco factory. Yes, they were undocumented, but they also had families. They were mothers and fathers, husbands and wives with children. Social services agencies and grassroots organizations that have stepped in to help are not able to come up with an exact number of children that were affected. But their estimates say that between 150 and 200 children were separated from one or both parents. Some still are. On March 6th of this year, I was assigned to do a New Bedford one-year anniversary story about what happened at Michael Bianco. I was able to profile a 19-year-old woman. She was pregnant at the time of the raid. Her husband also worked at Michael Bianco. He was immediately flown to a facility in Texas and was then deported to his native Honduras. She remains here with her baby that her husband has never seen. A baby girl who, of course, is an American citizen. She was born here. The mother has no money. She can no longer work, even though all she wants to do is work. A documented immigrant is letting her live rent-free in an apartment that he has, and she gets all of her clothing and all of her food from charitable agencies. I cannot imagine the terror with which this woman lives and goes to sleep with every night. Her next hearing date with immigration is not till September. I saw her in March. She knows she's very likely to get deported. Her answer to me about that, and I'm going to quote to you exactly what she said to me, "I'll risk my life. I'll do whatever it takes to come back because I want my daughter to have an education and a future, and she's not going to have that in Honduras." Now, on the day after the raid, after ICE and the U.S. Attorney held their news conference declaring that the operation had been conducted in an orderly, humane way, I went to New Bedford and learned about the ferocity with which immigration struck. The manager of a mattress store that's under the factory told me about the panic that resulted when 300 armed agents stampeded through Michael Bianco. Picture, if you will, these 300 agents trampling through the place like stormtroopers, fully geared up, too. Hundreds of panicked workers ran in every direction. And what resulted, as this factory store manager told me, was in a kind of earthquake of sorts. Everything in the plant shaking to the point that hundreds of small metal buttons that were part of the military vests that Michael Bianco was producing actually fell through small cracks in the floor to the mattress factory below. That day, I encountered a woman who said she didn't work on the day of the raid. She was aware of what had happened. In fact, she told me that her husband, who also worked at the factory, had not come home the night before. Despite the fact that her husband was missing, she was there to resume her job, and she was quite dismayed when she learned that she could not work there anymore. Now, this woman was tiny. Maybe she weighed 80 pounds, sopping wet. She was wearing a thin jacket on a brutally cold day. And even as she shivered, there was only one thing on her mind. When can I get back to work? Now, across the street was a man who said he was unemployed, and he was also clearly under the influence. He was rejoicing in what had happened because, after all, those illegals had taken jobs away from American citizens like him. 1 year after the raid, MIRA, the Massachusetts Immigrant and Refugee Advocacy Coalition, said on its website that about 100 new workers have been hired to replace the 360 workers who were arrested. And that factory is not operating at full capacity. They can't find enough people. Now, all my life, I have watched immigration operate. And the problem of undocumented aliens has only gotten bigger. I'm not alone in my opinion. I side with those who believe it is madness to think raids like this, one in New Bedford, and like others across the country, can solve this extremely complicated issue of undocumented aliens and illegal immigration. 1 year later, New Bedford's immigrant community remains devastated by what the federal government did, and local agencies are all stretched to the max as they try to restore some level of order to the humanitarian chaos that the raid triggered. I'm also not alone in my opinion that the fence, or about the fence, if we only fortify the border with a bigger, taller, thicker, deeper, stronger, more solid fence, they will stop coming. In keeping with that belief, the Bush administration, of course, is now building about 700 miles of it. I'm going to call it the super fence, to fortify the border. And it's doing it, of course, with a complete disregard for any and all environmentally sensitive areas. I grew up looking at that fence along the border. I was born in Nogales, Sonora, Mexico, and we moved across the border to Nogales, Arizona when I was 7 because my parents wanted myself and my brother and my sister to have an American education. The home that I grew up in was 1 mile from the border. Back then, that fence that I saw every day was a cyclone fence. It had a lot of holes in it. And today that fence is taller and stronger and much uglier, and the number of illegals apprehended is higher than ever before. In fact, it's well documented that people who want to come here for a better life are willing to take greater and greater risks to get here. Just like that young woman, the 19-year-old woman with her baby told me that she would do.